Look at that beige, window-dotted monstrosity sitting just off the interstate, right next to the Shell station and the abandoned Waffle House. You've driven past it 1,000 times without a single spark of interest. To you. In the world that was, it was just a place where mid-level regional managers went to weep into overpriced mini bottles of scotch while staring at a flickering television. It's a budget-friendly stay where the continental breakfast is a legal disclaimer disguised as a stale bagel and a prayer. You've dismissed it as a relic of a boring, consumerist society that valued convenience over everything. But here's the joke, the punchline that the universe has been saving for the moment the grid finally breathes its last gasp. That Holiday Inn Express is actually a medieval citadel in a polyester suit. When the Great Reset finally hits, and the local grocery store transforms into a gladiatorial arena for the last remaining bag of organic kale, you won't be looking for a farm or a bunker in the woods. You'll be looking for a lobby with a bowl of complimentary green apples and a sign that says, "Welcome, travelers." The irony is thick enough to choke on. Nobody in the history of the hospitality industry ever sat in a glass-walled boardroom and said, "Gentlemen, let's design a structure capable of sustaining human life during the total disintegration of global logistics." They were too busy arguing about the ROI of motion sensor hallway lighting and whether the lobby should smell like artificial sandalwood or corporate optimism. Yet, through a hilarious twist of fate and the sheer, grinding weight of government safety regulations, the modern hotel has become the most collapse-ready structure in the urban landscape. It is the accidental fortress. The reason you haven't realized this is because your brain is still stuck in the old-world software. You see a hotel, and you think of check-in times and annoying deposits. You don't see a self-contained life support system designed to keep the most helpless, skill-deficient, and demanding members of our species alive in an environment they don't understand. And if you think about it, that is the exact job description for a post-collapse shelter. You're going to be surrounded by people who don't know how to start a fire without a YouTube tutorial, and who think foraging means looking in the back of the pantry. A hotel was built for these people. It was built for you. Let's talk about the absolute most important resource in the new normal, water. In your current, pampered life, water is a ghost. It lives in the walls. It appears when you turn a handle, and you never give it a second thought until the bill shows up. In a collapse, water is God. Within 48 hours of the municipal pumps failing, your suburban neighbors will be out in the streets with buckets, looking at the sky like confused birds, hoping for rain. They'll be trying to boil the stagnant, mosquito-infested soup from the local drainage ditch. But if you're smart enough to be standing in a hotel mechanical room, you're currently sitting on a liquid gold mine that requires zero scavenging. Most people assume a hotel just pulls water from the city as needed. Wrong. To ensure that 300 tourists can all take a steaming hot shower at 7 a.m. without the pressure dropping to a trickle, hotels use massive commercial water heating and storage systems. We aren't talking about the 50-gallon tank in your basement that starts leaking if you look at it funny. We are talking about industrial-grade, pressurized steel tanks holding anywhere from 500 to 5,000 gallons of pre-filtered, potable water. When the world ends, that water doesn't just evaporate, it's trapped. The moment the grid dies and the city pressure vanishes, those tanks remain full, held in place by check valves and the simple physics of a closed system. It's sitting there in the dark, waiting for someone with a wrench and the sense to find it, but that's just the central reserve. Let's do some math, the kind of math that determines if your group lives to see next spring or ends up as a cautionary tale. Imagine a mid-sized 100-room hotel. Every single one of those rooms has a toilet. Now, I know what you're thinking, gross. I'm not drinking toilet water. Calm down, princess. I'm talking about the tank, not the bowl. Each of those tanks holds about 1.6 gallons of clean, fresh water. That's 160 gallons right there. Then you have the vertical pipes, the risers, that snake through the building. When the pressure dies, that water stays in the lines. Add in the residual water in the supply lines, the shut-off valves, and the sinks, And a single hotel can easily contain between 2,000 and 8,000 gallons of water on the day the music stops. Think about the scale of that windfall. If you're leading a group of 20 survivors, let's call them the leftovers, and you ration that water at 1 gallon per person per day for drinking and basic sanitation, you have enough to stay alive for 3 to 12 months. That's a year of life without ever having to step outside and risk a bullet to find a stream. It's a year of life without having to worry if your improvised sand filter is actually catching the giardia. The hotel solved your most pressing existential crisis before you even smashed the front door glass. While the rest of the world is dying of dysentery in the first month, you'll be in room 302, hydrated and calm, watching the chaos from the balcony. It's the ultimate irony of the apocalypse. The same infrastructure that was designed to make sure a vacationing family from Ohio could wash the Disney World grime off their kids is now the only thing keeping you from becoming a desiccated corpse in a ditch. And this is where the dark humor of our modern existence really shines. We've spent the last 20 years obsessing over sustainability and green living, buying overpriced reusable straws and feeling smug about our electric cars. But the most sustainable thing you'll ever find is a commercial-grade plumbing system built by a low-bid contractor in 1994. It wasn't built to be green. It was built to be reliable. Because if a guest doesn't get their hot shower, they leave a 1-star review on TripAdvisor. And in the old world, a 1-star review was worse than a death sentence. The hotel industry's terror of bad PR has accidentally gifted you a life raft. You're not just scavenging, you're inheriting the surplus of a civilization that was so obsessed with comfort it over-engineered its own plumbing to a degree that would make a Roman architect weep with envy. You're standing in a monument to excess, and for the first time in your life, that excess is going to save you. But water is just the beginning. The hotel isn't just a giant canteen, it's a fortress that was designed to survive the one thing that levels every other building in a riot: fire. Now, let's talk about the one thing that turns every post-collapse urban center into a funeral pyre: fire. In the old world, if your neighbor was a complete moron who forgot about a scented candle or tried to deep fry a frozen turkey in their garage, the fire department would show up in 6 minutes with sirens blaring and thousands of gallons of high-pressure water to save your property value. In the world after the collapse, there is no 911. There are no red trucks. There is only the terrifying reality that your neighbor is still a complete moron, but now he's trying to cook a squirrel over an open flame on a pile of IKEA furniture in the middle of his living room. If you're living in a standard residential suburb, you're basically living in a giant, pre-assembled stack of kindling. Modern homes are built out of engineered lumber, which is a fancy corporate term for sawdust and glue held together by hope and a 30-year mortgage. When one of those houses goes up, the whole block is usually gone before the sun sets. But the hotel? The hotel is a different beast entirely. It's an accidental bunker built out of the ashes of history's most horrific insurance payouts. See, the reason a hotel feels so cold, sterile, and uninvitingly solid is because the hotel industry spent the middle of the 20th century accidentally burning thousands of people alive. After enough catastrophic headlines and lawsuits that made the Great Depression look like a minor accounting error, the government stepped in with fire codes that are essentially the building equivalent of a straitjacket. They didn't make hotels fire-resistant. They made them fireproof to a degree that is frankly insulting to every other type of architecture. When you walk into a hotel room, you aren't just walking into a bedroom. You are stepping inside a 5-sided concrete and steel box designed to be an island in a sea of flame. The walls between rooms aren't the paper-thin drywall of your apartment where you can hear your neighbor sneezing. They are typically thick concrete blocks or double-layered, fire-rated gypsum board, specifically engineered to stop a raging inferno from moving more than an inch for 2 full hours. In a survival scenario, fire is your best friend and your deadliest enemy. You need it to cook, you need it for warmth, and you need it to sterilize the questionable water you found in a lobby fountain. But in a collapse, human error is magnified by a factor of 10. Someone in your group is going to be exhausted, or sick, or just plain stupid, and they're going to knock over a kerosene lamp in room 214. If you were in a house, that's game over. You'd be running into the night with nothing but the shirt on your back while everything you've scavenged turns to ash. In a hotel, however, that fire is a localized inconvenience. It hits the concrete walls. It realizes it has nothing to eat but a polyester bedspread and a particle board desk, and it stays right there. It burns itself out inside that concrete tomb while you and the rest of your group are sleeping soundly in room 216. The stay-in-place policy of modern hotels isn't just a suggestion, it's a physical reality dictated by the thermal mass of the building itself. Let's look at the hallways. Have you ever noticed those heavy, annoying doors that break the corridors into sections? You probably thought they were just there to make it harder to drag your luggage to the elevator. In reality, those are magnetic fire doors. The moment the local fire alarm system, which, by the way, is usually on its own dedicated battery backup trips, those doors slam shut. They turn a 300-foot hallway into a series of airtight compartments. They cut off the oxygen and create a barrier against smoke that would kill you long before the heat ever reached you. Even the stairwells are designed as areas of refuge. They are encased in masonry shafts that act as fireproof chimneys, designed to stay cool and breathable even if the rest of the floor is a literal hellscape. In a world where the guy down the street is accidentally burning down the entire neighborhood because he tried to make survival candles out of earwax and dryer lint he saw on a prepper TikTok, you'll be sitting pretty in your concrete fortress. And there's a psychological edge to this that most people overlook. In a collapse, your brain is under constant, grinding siege. You're always on high alert, listening for footsteps, watching the shadows, worrying about the next meal. The last thing you need is the existential dread of being burned alive in your sleep because your lookout fell asleep while holding a cigar. The hotel gives you the luxury of compartmentalized risk. It allows you to delegate survival tasks like cooking or light industrial work to specific areas of the building where a mishap won't kill the entire community. You can turn the ground floor breakfast nook into a communal kitchen and know that even if the grease trap catches fire, the people on the fourth floor are perfectly safe. It's an engineering marvel that we've all been ignoring because we were too busy complaining about the lack of free HBO. Then there's the thermal battery effect. Your typical modern house loses heat faster than a politician loses his dignity after an election. Once the HVAC system stops humming, the temperature inside a wood frame house will match the temperature outside within hours. But a hotel? All that concrete and steel acts as a massive heat sink. During the day, it absorbs whatever ambient heat is available, even just the body heat of 40 people living in the lobby. At night, it radiates that heat back inward. If you're smart enough to black out the windows with the industrial-grade curtains every hotel provides, which we'll get to in a minute, you can maintain a livable temperature inside a concrete hotel floor long after the houses. Across the street have become frozen tombs. It's the ultimate survival irony. The building that represents the peak of corporate coldness is actually the warmest place you'll find when the world goes cold. But let's talk about the what if. What if you're not just hiding? What if you need to defend this place? This is where the hotel's hospitality workflow turns into a tactical nightmare for anyone trying to get inside. Hotels are designed with a very specific, very paranoid philosophy. Everyone goes through the front door. Architects call it access control, but in the apocalypse, we call it a kill zone. Most hotels are built so that the only way into the guest wings is through a single central lobby. Every other exit the laundry bay, the kitchen delivery entrance, the side fire escapes designed to be locked from the outside and alarmed. They are egress-only points. This means that a small group of survivors only has to truly worry about one primary entrance. You don't need 100 guards to watch every window. You just need one guy with a bad attitude and a heavy barricade at the front revolving door. Inside, the layout is even more defensive. The hallways are long, straight, and narrow. To a guest, that's just a boring walk to their room. To a defender, That's a linear field of fire. If someone managed to breach the lobby and tried to make it to the guest rooms, they would have to run down a 100-foot hallway with absolutely zero cover while you watch them through a peephole from the safety of a reinforced room door. Speaking of doors, have you ever actually looked at a hotel room door? They aren't the hollow core, cardboard-filled doors you find in a bedroom at home. They are solid core wood or metal-clad fire doors, hung on heavy-duty commercial hinges with steel frames that are bolted directly into the masonry. They open inward, which is the golden rule of barricading. You can jam a desk under that handle, and no amount of shoulder charging is going to move it. You've essentially turned every single room in the building into an individual panic room. While the rest of the city is trying to secure their homes with plywood and prayers, you're living in a honeycomb of steel-framed vaults. The hotel wasn't built to be a fortress, but the people who designed it were so afraid of a difficult guest or a litigious visitor that they accidentally gave us a castle that can be defended by a skeleton crew. Let's move away from the architecture of survival for a moment and look at the soft resources that everyone ignores until they're shivering in the dark. In the old world, the housekeeping staff were the invisible ghosts of the hospitality machine. They were the people you barely looked at while they pushed heavy carts down the hallway, filled with tiny bottles of shampoo that smell like ocean breeze and despair. But in the collapse, the housekeeping department is the single most valuable logistics hub in a 10-mile radius. Most people, when they think of looting, go straight for the electronics store or the gun shop. They want the shiny toys. But a smart survivor is sprinting toward the linen closet on the 4th floor. Why? Because you can't eat a flat-screen TV, and you can't use a shotgun to stop a gaping wound from bleeding out. A hotel doesn't just have a few sets of sheets, it owns textiles in industrial, almost terrifying quantities. We're talking thousands of towels, sheets, pillowcases, blankets, and mattress pads. In a world where the global supply chain has just suffered a terminal heart attack, fabric is the new gold. Textiles are a depleting resource that most people completely underestimate. In a survival situation, your clothes are going to wear out within months. Your bedding is going to get contaminated. You're going to need bandages, filters, insulation, and cordage. A single hotel's textile reserve contains enough raw material to provide bedding, cold weather layering, and medical supplies for a group of 50 people for years. Think about the standard hotel flat sheet. In your previous life, it was just the thing you kicked off the bed when you got too hot. In the new world, that sheet is a multi-purpose survival tool. It's tightly woven, high-quality cotton or a cotton poly blend. You can tear that sheet into strips and braid it into cordage strong enough to lash a perimeter fence or secure a roof. You can fold it into layers to create compression bandages that are actually clean, unlike the grease-stained t-shirt you've been wearing for a week. You can hang them in doorways to create privacy barriers that are essential for maintaining the mental health of a group of stressed-out survivors, or you can use them as blackout material for your windows so the local warlords don't see your candle flickering from 3 blocks away. And then there's the evaporative cooling trick. If you're stuck in a hotel during a sweltering July without power, you can soak those industrial-grade sheets in that massive water reserve we talked about and drape them over a window frame. The air passing through the damp fabric will drop the temperature in the room by 10 degrees through pure physics. It's the kind of low-tech science that our ancestors used to stay alive, but which we've forgotten because we've been too busy arguing with our Nest thermostats. While the survivalists in the woods are trying to weave baskets out of damp grass like some kind of dystopian arts and crafts project, you'll be sitting in your room, wrapped in a 400 thread, count Egyptian cotton shroud, perfectly cool and hydrated. It's satirical, really. We spent decades perfecting the art of high-end luxury, and all it did was create a massive stockpile of high-quality bandages for the end of the world. But you can't live on towels alone. Eventually, the stomach starts growling, and this is where the hotel's culinary infrastructure turns into a literal lifesaver. Even a mid-tier breakfast-included property has a commercial kitchen that would make a prepper's basement look like a joke. We're talking about walk-in coolers and freezers the size of a studio apartment. When the power goes out, those freezers become ticking clocks. You have a 48 to 72-hour window of caloric windfall. While your neighbors are fighting over the last dented can of beans at the local mart, you could be processing 300 pounds of high-quality protein. If you have the sense to fire up the kitchen's commercial gas range, which is often connected to massive external propane tanks that can last for months, you can cook, preserve, or smoke that meat before it becomes a biohazard. And let's talk about that kitchen for a second. It's not just about the food, it's about the institutional scale of the equipment. Everything is stainless steel. In a world without antibiotics, sanitation isn't just a buzzword. It's the difference between a productive Tuesday and dying of a horrific stomach bug. Stainless steel surfaces are non-porous. They don't harbor the bacteria and ghost flavors of last week's scavenging. You can bleach a commercial kitchen until it's sterile enough for surgery. Residential kitchens, with their porous wooden cabinets and laminate countertops, are basically petri dishes for the next plague. In a hotel kitchen, you have industrial-sized pots that can feed 50 people at once, commercial-grade ventilation hoods that vent directly to the roof, allowing you to cook with fire without suffocating everyone in the building, and a supply of cleaning chemicals that could sanitize a small city. The dry storage room is the real treasure chest. It's packed with bulk staples, 50-pound bags of rice, dried pasta, industrial jugs of cooking oil, spices, and canned goods that are calibrated to feed a rotating door of guests for weeks between deliveries. This isn't just food, it's community cohesion. In a collapse, the group that can provide a hot, consistent meal is the group that stays together. The group that is fighting over individual granola bars is the group that starts looking at each other's shins as potential snacks. The hotel kitchen provides the physical framework for a functional society. It's the engine room of the fortress. Here's a what-if for you to chew on. What would a modern TikTok lifestyle influencer do in this situation? They'd probably walk into that kitchen, see the lack of lighting and the aesthetic of the stainless steel, and try to film a "What I Eat in a Day" Apocalypse Edition video. They'd be dead within a week because they'd be too busy trying to find a natural light spot to realize they're standing on top of a goldmine of survival resources. They'd try to upcycle the sheets into a trendy dress while you're using them to filter the sediment out of your water. It's a harsh truth, but the people who valued vibes over function are going to be the first ones to realize that you can't manifest a functional diesel generator. And speaking of power, let's look at the hotel's ghost in the machine. Fire codes and hospitality standards require these buildings to have emergency backup systems that would put a doomsday bunker to shame. Most hotels have a dedicated mechanical room with a diesel generator that is wired directly into the building's life safety systems. In a luxury property, that generator might be large enough to run the entire building, including the elevators and the HVAC. Even in a budget property, that generator is designed to kick in automatically to keep the lights on in the hallways and the fire alarms active. When the grid fails and the world goes dark, a hotel might stay lit for several days on its internal fuel supply. But the real value isn't just the fuel, it's the infrastructure. The building is already wired for a backup source. You don't need to be an electrical engineer or a mad scientist with a bunch of car batteries and jumper cables. The circuits are already mapped. The panels are labeled. If you can scavenge diesel from abandoned trucks or even biodiesel from the vegetable oil in the kitchen, you can restart that heart. You can have light, communication, and refrigeration in a structure that was professionally maintained by a guy named Gary for 20 years. You aren't building a system, you're reclaiming one. You're flipping a switch on a civilization that was too lazy to appreciate what it had until it was gone. You're the one turning the lights back on while the rest of the world is learning how to be afraid of the dark again. But let's get to the real killer, the thing that's going to dismantle your survival group faster than a lack of water or a breach in the perimeter. Other people. Specifically, the social engineering of a bunch of stressed, terrified, and probably very smelly humans being forced into close proximity. In the before times, Humans were already pretty bad at coexisting. We invented suburbs just so we could have 6 feet of grass between us and the nearest person we didn't want to talk to. We invented noise-canceling headphones so we wouldn't have to acknowledge the existence of a stranger on a plane. Now, take those same fragile, privacy-obsessed creatures, take away their Wi-Fi, their favorite Starbucks order, and their sense of basic safety, and shove them all into a single building. In any other structure, a gymnasium, a warehouse, or a local high school, this is where the real horror movie starts. Within 48 hours, the lack of personal space creates a psychological pressure cooker that leads to what I like to call the gymnasium meltdown. When you have 50 people sleeping on cots in an open room, trust doesn't just erode, it evaporates. Every cough is a threat. Every whispered conversation is a conspiracy. Every snoring neighbor is a reason for a physical altercation. This is where the hotel's final and perhaps most brilliant, accidental feature comes into play. A hotel is the only building type on Earth designed to manage large numbers of strangers who don't know each other, don't trust each other, and have absolutely no desire to interact, yet must live under the same roof. The architecture of a hotel is a masterclass in subliminal social management. It's built on the foundation of the private room. In a survival situation, the most valuable thing you can give a human being isn't a weapon. It's a door they can lock from the inside. That simple act of retreating into a private space or room that belongs only to them, with their own bed, their own bathroom, and their own 4 walls solves 90% of the interpersonal friction that destroys survivor communities. It provides the psychological reset button. When the world is falling apart outside, being able to sit in room 412 and just exist without being watched by 40 other pairs of eyes is the difference between a functioning community and a murderous mob. The hotel organizes people by default. You don't have to play neighborhood watch or tribal leader to get things moving. The floor-by-floor layout creates natural, manageable subgroups. People on the 3rd floor will naturally start to look out for one another. They'll build a localized trust that is small enough to be real but connected enough to the larger group through the shared resources of the lobby and the kitchen. It's tribalism light, engineered by a guy in a suit who just wanted to make it easier for the cleaning staff to track their progress. And let's look at the command and control center. Every hotel has a front desk. In the old world, it was the place where you complained about the lack of extra towels or the fact that the ice machine was broken. In the collapse, the front desk is your bridge. It's the natural hub for communication, record-keeping, and security. It sits at the bottleneck of the entire building's flow. If you're the one standing behind that desk, you aren't just a clerk anymore. You're the administrative heart of a functioning fortress. Compare this to a residential house. A house is a luxury for a family, but it's a death trap for a group. You try to put 20 people in a 4-bedroom colonial, and by day 3, someone is getting stabbed over who used the last of the toilet paper. A house doesn't have scale. An office building, on the other hand, has scale but no soul. It has vast, open floor plans that are impossible to heat, impossible to secure, and offer zero privacy. You ever try to sleep in a cubicle? It's a special kind of hell that makes you wish for the sweet release of the apocalypse. A warehouse is just a giant box of nothing. It provides volume but zero compartmentalization. You're just a target in a big, empty room. And a hospital? Sure, a hospital has medical equipment, but it's designed for the dying. It's a maze of trauma and sterile misery that is physically and psychologically exhausting to inhabit. The hotel is the Goldilocks of the collapse. It's just right. It gives you the scale of a commercial building with the intimacy of a home. It provides the water, the fireproofing, the defensive geometry, the massive textile reserves, the industrial kitchen, and the pre-wired power systems, all wrapped in a social framework that prevents you from killing your neighbors before the first winter hits. It's a survival machine that we've been paying $129 a night to use, never realizing that we were actually training for the end of the world. Imagine it. While the rest of the city is descending into a chaotic, Mad Max fever dream of burning houses and desperate scavengers wandering the streets, your group is thriving. You've got a lookout on the roof with a 360-degree view of the highway. You've got a communal kitchen serving hot rice and beans on stainless steel prep tables. You've got thousands of gallons of water in the basement and thousands of sheets in the closets for everything from bandages to signal flags. You have people who are sane because they have a room of their own to sleep in. You aren't just surviving, you're maintaining a standard of living that would make a medieval king jealous. The dark irony of our modern, consumerist society is that we spent all our time building monuments to our own helplessness. We built hotels because we were too lazy to cook for ourselves, too pampered to sleep in the dirt, and too disconnected to know our neighbors. We created these beige boxes to facilitate a lifestyle of total, unthinking dependency. And yet, in doing so, we accidentally built the most robust, redundant, and defensible life support systems in human history. We over-engineered our comfort so thoroughly that we created a safety net for the moment that comfort finally disappears. The next time you're driving down the interstate and you see one of those generic, boring hotel signs peeking over the tree line, don't just roll your eyes. Stop thinking of it as a place for a point stay or a business trip. Look at the concrete walls. Look at the single entrance. Look at the massive HVAC units on the roof and the heavy fire doors in the corridors. See it for what it truly is, a survival fortress that's sitting in plain sight, hidden by the camouflage of everyday boredom. It's a castle in a corporate mask. It's a sanctuary built by accountants and fire inspectors. And when the lights finally go out for good, it'll be the only place left where someone might still be smart enough to walk in, turn the key, and find a reason to keep going. So, let the preppers have their bunkers in the middle of nowhere. Let them bury their shipping containers in the desert and pray that nobody finds their air vent. I'll take the Holiday Inn next to the freeway. I'll take the concrete box with the industrial laundry and the 5,000 gallons of water in the mechanical room. Because while the world is busy burning itself down, I'll be sitting in room 502, wrapped in a clean towel, watching the sunrise from a balcony that was designed for a tourist but reclaimed by a survivor. The apocalypse isn't just about who has the most guns. It's about who has the best infrastructure. And the hospitality industry just gave you the keys to the kingdom. You just have to be smart enough to check in.